We live in a work-obsessed society. Now, don't hear me wrong. I didn't say that we work harder than anyone else or than we ever have, or that it's harder today than it was in the past. But our obsession with work plays out in many different ways. For one, we work longer than the vast majority of other modern Western cultures. The red bar is the US, the blue is the UK, the yellow is Italy and Germany's average hours worked in a given day. Another, we work more than we thought we would 60, 70 years ago when people were guessing what the work week would look like in the future, despite the fact that our labor today is more efficient and gets more done than was imagined by those in their same guesses. We work so much that it affects the people around us. This is the results of a recent study where more than 1,000 3rd through 12th graders were asked how they would want their parents' work to change. What would you want to change about your parents' work? Being less stressed out by work is that yellow bar. Far higher than those who wanted more time with their parents was those who wanted their parents to be less stressed by work. And for me, knowing how much kids love having their parents around, that says that our work tends to stretch us so thin that even the time we do get to spend with our families, our kids, ends up being a struggle. We live in a work-obsessed society. But as is so often the case with our cultural idols, when we look at how the Bible handles the topic of work, I think we see that we as a culture have somehow managed to both diminish what work is supposed to be and to elevate it into a place that it was never meant to be. So today we're going to ask, how do we become wise about our work? Over the next 3 weeks here, we're going to hit a few different topics, kind of looking at, especially in the book of Proverbs, what does the Bible teach us about these topics? And today is work. I think we're going to see that we find that there is goodness to work, that there is brokenness to work, and that there is a possibility of redemption in our work. So let's go ahead and dive in. If we're starting a conversation of work in our world today, I think we would probably start with the assumption that work stinks. If you listen to most of the voices out there, that's how you'd feel. We are obsessed with work, and yet somehow we hate it too. I can't tell you how many folks I talk to in the community, and when I talk about the future and I talk about work, the first answer is, how long until I get to retire? How long until I get to be done with this? For those who are younger, how many Instagram influencers are there out there who are all about the work avoidance lifestyle? Their entire thing is, let me show you all the things I do that aren't work. I read a story recently about an anonymous tech employee who, after the pandemic, realized that he could make lots more money if his full-time job was essentially getting himself hired for fully remote jobs, stacking a bunch of them on top of each other, and then just collecting the checks and minimally replying to emails at his new work email addresses to keep the wheels running until eventually he got fired a few months later. He said that at that point he had had at least 17 full-time jobs that year, and if I remember right, it was May when I was reading the article. We have this modern attitude toward hating work, and the funny thing is, it is a very ancient attitude as well. We are vibing with our ancestors when we feel bad about work, when we do not like it. In Greek mythology, there's the legend of Pandora. The world is good, the world is nice, and then the gods give Pandora the box and they say, Pandora, don't open the box, bad stuff comes out. What's one of the things that comes out of the box? It's work. In Greek mythology, work doesn't exist until the box of evils is unleashed upon the world. In the ancient Near Eastern creation myths of the peoples who lived around the Israelites in the Old Testament, the most common reason for the creation of people in those stories was that the gods hated working and decided to make someone to do it for them. That was by far the most powerful narrative of why do we exist as people? Well, the gods don't like working, so you've got to instead. Take that, sucker. The ancients hated work. So for us today, if we feel the same way, this is a long-standing human tradition to hate work. But the thing is, that's not the attitude toward work that we see showing up in the Bible. See, when work first shows up in the Bible, it shows up in the Garden of Eden. It shows up in paradise. It shows up in the garden before the fall, before sin and evil and brokenness enter into the world. In Genesis 1:28, we read, "And God blessed them. And God said to them, 'Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth.'" Those are work words. Fill it, subdue it, take dominion over it. They're pointing towards a work, a job that was to be done by humans right off the bat. It's not the lounge of Eden. It's not the waiting room of Eden, the break room of Eden. It's the Garden of Eden. And as any gardener knows, there's a lot of work to be done to end up where you want it to be. One theologian said, and I love the way he put this, he said, "The garden was unspoiled but unfinished." God left work to be done when He created it. That in fact, that work was supposed to be a facet of our relationship with God. Work in the biblical story is a good gift from God for us to connect to Him. He's giving us an opportunity to be like Him. He does work in creating the world. He invites us to continue doing work. It's supposed to be something that helps us connect to Him. And in fact, it's not just supposed to be something that helps us connect to Him, it's supposed to be something that connects us to each other too. Because right away we find out Adam can't do the work by himself. He needs help. God says it is not good that the man is alone, but He says that in the context of Adam doing the work of cultivating the garden and naming the animals and kind of putting the world into order. God says it's not good for him to be doing this alone. He needs a co-worker, a co-laborer, a friend, a helper, someone to do this amazing endeavor with him. Work was designed to be a part of our relationship with God and a part of our relationship with each other too. It's supposed to be a way in which we get help in appreciating each other, in connecting to each other, in getting things done together that we couldn't do alone. And Proverbs paints us some pictures of what this good version of work, this true and good and pure version of work could look like. In Proverbs 12:11 it says, "Whoever works his land will have plenty of bread." And in Proverbs 27:18, "Whoever tends a fig tree will eat its fruit." Our joint work is supposed to provide for people, for ourselves and for each other. When we put food on the table, whether metaphorically or literally, that's a reflection of what work was meant to do from the start. Providing for our needs and for the needs of others. But it goes even beyond kind of providing for our basic needs. Proverbs also talks about work being good when we do it excellently, when we create beauty. Proverbs 22 says, "Do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings." And that word for being skillful in work is a word for excellence of any sort, of one kind or another. This could be art or carpentry, cleaning or cooking or counting, song or soccer or whatever else it is. It's being great at something. So we see Proverbs giving us these echoes. It's saying, hey, look, it could be good. It could be a way to provide for yourself and others, a way to bring excellence and beauty into the world and bring organization out of chaos, all these different things. And if that's true, why is it that we seem, I don't know about you, but that for most of us, it feels like work connects us more to the ancients and Pandora's box than it does to the Garden of Eden? Why is it that our work so often feels like a curse? And I think the answer is we feel like it's a curse because in some ways it is. It's not a curse, but it is cursed. When Adam and Eve choose to trust the enemy instead of God, when they choose their own desires, particularly their own desire to be their own boss, to be God instead of being created in His image, they break the world. But very specifically, they broke work. When God speaks to them and tells them what the consequences of the fall are going to look like, in Genesis 3, God says, "Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground." God says, Adam, because of your actions, your work has changed in its fundamental character. Where once there was accomplishment, there will now be struggle. Where once there was creativity and excellence, there is now toil and sweat. Where once there was fruitfulness and flowers, there is now the thorn and the thistle. Work was supposed to be a uniting force in the relationship between God and man. But now, because Adam and Eve decided they wanted to be their own boss, the work is for themselves and not for God. It threw off who our work is for and our ability for our work to connect us to God. And that first decision snowballs into some other consequences and side effects as well. There in Genesis 3, we see that relationship between us and God broken, but we also see the beginning notes of disharmony between ourselves and other people in our work. We said earlier that Adam couldn't do the work by himself, that Eve was created as a co-worker, a co-laborer, a friend, a helper, that they were supposed to do it together, aid each other in the work. But now when we get to the curse, work gets separated off from Eve, and instead it gets pushed back onto Adam. He gets relegated to work. This isn't a gender thing. This isn't about who wears the pants in a relationship. This isn't about who should be working in the market. It's a brokenness thing. It's an isolation thing. It's showing that their relationship that was supposed to be codependent in a good way has broken down into being adversarial. It's moving away from work being something that unites us together to being something that divides us. And we see that pattern finalized and formalized famously in the Tower of Babel, where humanity gets to the point where the only thing we can agree on is bad things. The only cooperation possible for us is cooperating and running as far as we can from God. And so in His mercy, our work again suffers the curse of our rebellion. The people of Babel are scattered across the earth. Their joint labor dissolves back into the dust. And work itself is driven further and further into exile from what it was meant to be. Work now becomes something that can isolate us from God, isolate us from other people. Quarterback. Hard change into an illustration. Quarterback has been called the most influential position in major American sports. The one spot in a team sport more than any other that determines the outcome of a game for the rest of the team. I experienced this as a high school football coach in California because when we had a really good quarterback, my first year coaching the varsity team, we were awesome. We won our league. We got to the semifinals for our region in the state. We ended up going 11-2, including the playoffs. And all of us coaches got these cool cups with a very fun logo on it from the local Lions Club. I will tell you, when we had significantly worse records in future years, they did not give us cool cups for those seasons. Quarterback can really determine the outcome of your team. And if quarterback is critical in football, then, and it hurts me, it pains me, and it probably pains Amy even more to admit this, Tom Brady is probably, begrudgingly, as a fan of a different team, probably the greatest quarterback in NFL history. Oh, it hurts so bad. Tom might have more room to feel like he is the master of his work than any of us in this room ever will. And by the end of his playing career, I think that we can objectively say from the outside looking in that Tom's work became his idol and it ended up messing up his life. Because winning became the thing that really mattered. And that translated for Tom Brady into a refusal to retire. Even when he had told people, even when he had sworn to people, when he had sworn to the people closest to him that he would be done, just one more became the mantra. And so, Tom Brady lost his wife, got a divorce, broke his marriage, and in so doing permanently wounded his relationship with his kids because he wouldn't let go. He had to play just one more year. But the thing is, work is a really fickle God. Work is not a dependable God or idol in our lives. And Tom's last year was forgettable. It was just kind of a thing. At the end of the season, he posted his end-of-year, eyes towards the future Instagram post. I think he was trying to be like, yeah, look, the future's so great. But in the post, he just looked run down and lost and alone. Brady's obsession with work had ended up breaking his relationship with the people around him. And so in these first few chapters, in these first few Proverbs, we're seeing how when our work becomes about us instead of God, when I work for myself and not for others, work can be something that becomes the opposite of the good that God intended it to be, and in fact becomes a destructive force in my life. And in Proverbs, we see that there's one final de-evolution for work. Proverbs 13:4 says, "The soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied." And then in Proverbs 15:19 it says, "The way of the sluggard is like a hedge of thorns, but the path of the upright is a level highway." The final separation of work from its intended purpose is the separation of work from us. We get so discouraged by the hollowed out shell of what work was supposed to be that our society holds out as this is the thing you get your accomplishment from, that we can't take it anymore. We can't do it. We can't answer the why questions around work, and so we just don't. This is a type of despair that I think many of us, I know most of you guys, we're pretty hardworking folks as a group, and so I think we have a tendency to look down on this. But it's really something where we as Christians should have a sense of, there go I, but for the grace of God. Because this isn't just like any other evil, like any other sin in life, this isn't just about what's going on in our hearts, it's about how the whole world is broken. This is a despair that is a result of the fact that after the fall, none of this works right. None of the world around us is how it was supposed to be. And so we get left with a question. If none of this is right, how does it get healed? How does it get better? Is there hope for us when it comes to our work? This year, we've been focusing especially strongly on this idea that the whole Bible is tied together. That while it is 66 books written by dozens of authors over thousands of years, it is also one divinely inspired and united narrative of God's love for mankind and of His gracious action in creating us and then rescuing us from ourselves. And if we're keeping it in mind, then there was an alarm bell that went off in that last proverb, chapter 15, verse 19. Let me read again. "The way of the sluggard is like a hedge of thorns, but the path of the upright is a level highway." There is a specific word in there that ties us into how the Bible talks about work throughout the rest of the Bible, and it is the word thorns. When the curse comes, God says, instead of easy fruitfulness, the land will now produce thistles and thorns. And now Proverbs teaches us that the way of the sluggard, someone who has given into despair around work and said, I just can't do this anymore, there's no purpose, there's no meaning, there's no reason, the way of the sluggard is covered with thorns. It is like a hedge of thorns, a barrier of thorns. You can't get through it. We have this impression in our society sometimes, and I think sometimes even within the church, that if I'm lazy, my life will go badly, but if I'm hardworking, it'll be good. Everything will work out. I just have to do my best. Getting back to my high school football team in California, one of my players there posted on social media years ago, "I've been working hard, and now God's going to come through for me." And I think that is a little bit of our attitude. If I work hard, good things happen. If I don't work hard, bad things happen. And sometimes that's how it works. But that's actually not how it works here in Proverbs 15:19. It said it's not the diligent or the hardworking who have the smooth path, the level highway. It's the upright. It's the righteous. It's those who are good and true and right. And if we're keeping track of what's been going on in the Bible as we read through it, especially if you've been doing the readings with us and you've been in Romans the last couple of weeks, this is the point where we sink down in our seat a little and go, uh-oh, this isn't looking very good for me right now. Because as Romans taught us, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We're all messed up. We're all the sluggards in the sense that we don't do all the things that we should do. We don't treat work the way that we should treat it. Whether our work is in a home, in an office, in a school, in a hospital, in a wherever, we don't do what we should be doing. It makes sense. As my boys would probably put it, this is where we find out that we're in deep, deep doo-doo. It makes sense because of our experience of the world. Like, how many of you have a perfect, wonderful job where you never experience a thorn or a thistle ever? None of us do. None of us have an obstacle-free work life. None of our work sounds perfectly like that creation work. And this is where the story of the Bible takes its most important turn, because this is where we find someone coming into the story who isn't under the curse. Someone for whom work is a blessing. I think we sometimes forget that Jesus was a carpenter for way longer than he was a rabbi. His blue-collar resume is a lot longer than his white-collar one. And so Jesus knows work in both of those contexts, in whatever context. And as someone who was not under the curse, Jesus could do work that was right and true and blessed, that was what it was always supposed to be. Jesus was the one who could say, the way of the upright, my way, is smooth and level and easy because I do things exactly rightly. And this perfect worker, this perfect person, instead, metaphorically, comes down to our thorn-covered road and grabs that hedge and pulls it, and he allows soldiers to place it onto his brow. When we read about Jesus in the Gospels, it says that the soldiers push a crown of thorns onto his head as he goes to the cross for us. And he takes those thorns, and it's as if he's giving us this beautiful image of saying, I'm going to take the consequences of your rebellion, of your sin. I'm going to take the brokenness that should apply to your work, and I'm going to carry it with me to the cross so that you don't have to carry it anymore. And in Jesus, he takes the punishment for us, and he gives us, through his Spirit, that level road that good and right and true and upright work deserves. And when he does that, when his Spirit brings us back to life through that gift of taking away the brokenness that we deserve and giving us his gift of righteousness instead, Jesus opens a way for us, for our work, to start being a blessing instead of a curse to us again. He actually gives us hope that our work can start looking a little more like it was supposed to from the start, because we can start having the right person that we're working for again. Colossians 3:23-24, we read earlier, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. We have a new motivation. We have a new purpose. And by the way, there is no way, shape, or form in which this is only for those who are working in a church or a ministry or a nonprofit or whatever else. Are you cleaning houses? You're serving people. You're helping to bring order to creation. You're helping people prevent illness or mental distress that they would be in from living in a bad place otherwise. Are you building or fixing things? You're using the resources that God gave you to bring craftsmanship into the world, to create like our Creator did, or to fix things that have fallen apart like Jesus did for us. Are you enforcing laws or working in civil service? Then you're helping our community to push back on the darkness of sin and evil around us. Whatever job you do, whether it's something that our society considers a job or not, whatever it is that God calls you to do with your hours and your days, that can be something that glorifies God, and it's something in which we can glorify God together. Our work can be more and more for God, yes, but also for others as well. Micah 4, in a prophecy of the new heavens and new earth, when all things are made new, Micah 4 says that God shall judge between many peoples and shall decide disputes for strong nations far away. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, and nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. It's showing us that on the large scale, Jesus' return means the end of hostility between peoples. But in the New Testament, we start to see the seeds of that truth. It says, you're not going to just see this at the end. You're going to start to see this coming true in your lives and in your churches and in your communities and in your relationships with one another. Ephesians 4:28, again we read it earlier, let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. I don't know if there is a more I matter more than you profession than burglary, robbery, and theft. It's the definition of, I don't care whether this belongs to you or not, I want it, and so I can take it because I matter more than you do. And yet, Paul here says, some of you were this. This was the definition of your lives. But in Jesus, it can be new. It can be about the people around you. It can go from being about, what can I take from the people around me to what can I give back? I think we underestimate the ability of our work to be a part of God's work of revival in the world around us. I think one of the 3 or 4 greatest modern revivals that we've seen happened because of workers. And it happened because of workers' work being changed by God. I didn't have this one down, so I apologize if I go a little long on this, but it's an amazing story. In the early 1900s in South Korea, there was a revival that happened amongst Presbyterian dock workers there in the city. And apparently there had been this culture amongst the dock workers of the city where if you needed a tool and you didn't have the tool, you just went and stole it from the person closest to you that you remember seeing in their shop. You would go say hi and then make a loud noise and disappear with the tool into the night. Like, it was just this accepted thing of we would just steal from each other instead of getting the thing that we needed. And then there was this revival happening, and the way that it started spreading was that a group of South Korean dock workers said, we're going to stop doing that, and in fact, we're going to take all the things we've stolen back to the people that we stole it from, and we're going to take small gifts with us to say that we're sorry for what we did in that. Imagine if all of the Christians in your profession found the one thing that your profession finds the most acceptable and the most fine and the most whatever that's totally against what God tells us to do in life, and said, we're going to take a hard pass on this, we're going to be loud about it, and we're going to be loud about it not in a we're better than you way, but in a we realize that this is wrong and that we have been doing it, and we want to apologize, and we want to show the glory of the God who calls us to live a different life. Our work can be a part of revival here on earth. And then, just as we close out here, our work actually ends up being a picture of God's goodness at the end too. We've talked a little bit about how work can move back in our lives today towards being what it's supposed to be, but when the Bible talks about the end of all things, when the Bible talks about all things being made new, it talks about how we have hope for work there too. As the hymn so beautifully puts it, we have strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. In Isaiah 65, we see a vision of the future, a vision of what it's going to be like when God fixes everything, when He wipes every tear from every eye, makes all things new. And in that new world, Isaiah 65:21 says, they shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. That's not talking about not sharing with each other. It's talking about not stealing from each other. It's saying no one's going to steal from each other anymore. For like the days of a tree shall the days of my people be, and my chosen shall long enjoy the work of their hands. They shall not labor in vain. And that's the hope that we hold on to as Christians, that our labor is not in vain. Brothers and sisters, work was good, and then work was broken. And we have to face the reality of that in the world around us today, but we can also live with the hope that through the finished work of Jesus Christ, work is being redeemed, and that one day it will be fully redeemed in the kingdom of God. Let's pray.